16th chapter. Last week we saw how repeatedly the children of Israel filled their hearts with doubts, and again and again they murmured against God as they traveled through the wilderness. Even the rulers and the elders of the people joined in complaining against God and Moses. They cried out, "Would to God we had died by the hand of the Lord in the land of Egypt, when we sat by the flesh pots, and when we did eat bread to the full. For you have brought us forth into this wilderness to kill the whole assembly with hunger." They really believed that God led them out just to starve them to death. God had promised these people that He would be their God. He promised to take them to Himself as a people and lead them into a large and a good land. But they were ready to complain at every obstacle they encountered on the way to that land.
Pastor, I don't think your microphone's working.
Not? Is it not on, John?
It's on.
It's on, he said. And,
Pastor Joe,
yes,
pull your mic. It's not.
use this
not
one.
working.
This one's not working for some reason.
Sorry.
Okay, we'll see if we'll get this one. I'm going to do it slowly. I don't want it to scare me, so I have to duck. I feel embarrassed when I have to duck behind the pulpit here. Okay, is that loud enough? Is that working? All right. But the people forgot the hardships that they had suffered in their captivity in Egypt. They also forgot the goodness and the power of God displayed in their behalf in the deliverance from bondage. These people had already forgotten how their children had been spared when the angel of death took the firstborn of all of the Egyptians. They forgot that grand exhibition at the Red Sea. They forgot how they had crossed safely as on dry land while their enemies had been swallowed up by the waters. But like many of us today, they saw and they felt only their present inconveniences and trials, whether real or perceived. And we behold today with amazement their constant discontent, their murmuring, their complaining, their rebellion. But yet do we not follow in their footsteps if we can't trust God, if we can trust God only when things are going our way? We look back at ancient Israel and we marvel at their unbelief. We marvel at their murmurings against God, and we feel that, oh, if we'd have been there and seen all of that, we would never have been so ungrateful. We would never have been unbelieving, having witnessed all of those things. But when our faith is tested, even by little trials today, we tend to manifest no more faith than did ancient Israel. Many today indulge in an anxiety that only frets and wears upon them, but does not help them to bear their trials. And we must never ever forget that we are not to give place to fears or to worries, apprehensions, and concerns that would cause us to distrust God in any degree whatsoever. So picking our study back up this morning, in chapter 16, we're going to start with verse 1 and see what God has got for us here, what we're going to learn from this today. They took their journey from Elim, and all the congregation of the children of Israel came into the wilderness of Sin, which is between Elim and Sinai. And on the 15th day of the second month, after their departing out of the land of Egypt, and the whole congregation of the children of Israel murmured against Moses and Aaron in the wilderness. And the children of Israel said unto them, "Would to God that we had died by the hand of the Lord in the land of Egypt, when we sat by" what? Hey, we want to go back here. We want to sit next to our McDonald's, our Burger King, our Mr. Steak or Bonanza. We had it so good in Egypt. You see how they forgot? We want to be back there by the flesh pots. And when we did eat bread to the full, for you have brought us forth into this wilderness to kill this whole assembly. You're going to kill all 1,000,000 of us. You're going to starve us to death. Then said the Lord unto Moses, Behold, I will rain bread from heaven for you, and the people shall go out together a certain rate every day, that I may prove them whether they will walk in my law or no. And it shall come to pass that on the 6th day they shall prepare that which they bring in, and it shall be twice as much as they gather daily. Moses and Aaron said unto the children of Israel at even, Then you shall know that the Lord hath brought you out from the land of Egypt. And in the morning then you shall see the glory of the Lord, for he hears your murmuring against the Lord. And what are we that you murmur against us? And Moses said, This shall be when the Lord shall give you in the evening flesh to eat, and in the morning bread to the full, for that the Lord hears your murmurings which you murmur against him. And what are we? Your murmurings are not against us, but against who?
The Lord.
The Lord. They wanted to be back at their flesh pots. And God says, all right, I'm going to do something now that is going to be a test to you. I'm going to prove you to see whether you're going to walk in my law or not. And then in verse 8, he says, Moses says, now I want you to realize this too, folk. Your murmuring is not against me. It's not against Brother Aaron over here. When you do this, when you murmur against who? The Lord. You think we do well to remember that today? We want to complain about the church. We want to complain about specific situations in the church. We want to complain about particular members in the church or leaders in the church. But when you're complaining, who do you complain against? Tell me, I want to make sure you know. God. That is important to understand, that our complaints are being thrown into the face of God when we fall into this same trend. This was so bad with the children of Israel. I want to jump 1 year into their wanderings now. Take your Bibles and go back to the book of Numbers. An entire year has passed, and in Numbers, the 11th chapter, I want you to see what's going on. Numbers chapter 11. Now let's start with verse 1. And when the people complained, it displeased the Lord. Now, do you understand that part? When you complain, what do you do?
Please.
Would it not be advantageous to stop complaining? You see, it displeases the Lord, and the Lord heard it. And also remember, every time you complain, he does hear it. And his anger was kindled. And the fire of the Lord burnt among them and consumed them, that they were in the uttermost parts of the camp. And the people cried unto Moses, and when Moses prayed unto the Lord, the fire was quenched. You see, they complain when things aren't going their way, but when they want something from God, then they start to pray. One or the other, praying and complaining. And he called the name of the place Taberah, okay? Taberah, which means a burning, because the fire of the Lord burned among them. And the mixed multitude, now watch what happens. The mixed multitude that was among them fell a lusting, or had some desires for something. And the children of Israel also wept again and said, who shall what? You see, it's right back a year later. Now, ironic. They've just, many of them, been destroyed by a fire that came through the camp. And then they start complaining again when the fire goes away. It says, we remember the fish which we did eat in Egypt freely, and the cucumbers and the melons and the leeks and the onions and the garlic. Now, they remembered that. What were they eating? Manna. Who provided it? Now watch this. They want their leek. You know, one time I was in a church, had a head elder. His wife used to like to complain a lot. And she was there complaining one day and just going on and on. And the elder, there was only about 4 of us, my wife and, yeah, there was just my wife and I and these 2 people. She was carrying on like that, and the elder looked across the table at her, and he started going, oh, I just wish I could go back to Egypt and have some leeks and onions. The wife immediately knew what her husband was doing. She wasn't too pleased with him, but she stopped her complaining immediately. You see, but now our soul is dried away. There is nothing at all besides this manna before our eyes. How hard did they have to work to get that manna? What did they have to plant or harvest or water or anything? Now watch. And the manna was as coriander seed, and the color thereof is the color of bdellium. And the people went about and gathered it, and ground it in mills, or beat it in mortar, or baked it in pans, and made cakes of it. And the taste of it was as the taste of fresh oil. And when the dew fell upon the camp at night, the manna fell upon it. So here's stuff that they ground it, they used a mortar, they baked it, they did all kinds of different things with this stuff. And then Moses heard the people weep throughout their families, every man in the door of his tent, and the anger of the Lord was kindled greatly. Moses also was displeased. So here's these people. God's providing for them, and they're unhappy with what he gives them. They want the stuff they had in their captivity. And God became very displeased. Now dropping down, verse 18. It says, and say, well, God's telling Moses, say thou unto the people, sanctify yourselves against tomorrow, and you shall eat flesh. For you have wept in the ears of the Lord, saying, who shall give us flesh to eat? For it was well with us in Egypt. Therefore the Lord will give you flesh, and you shall eat it. See that? You were complaining, you had it so good in Egypt. You're not happy that I brought you out of Egypt. Well, I've heard your request, and I'm going to give it to you, and you are going to eat it. And you shall not eat 1 day, nor 2 days, nor 5 days, neither 10 nor 20 days, but even a whole month, until it comes out your nostrils, and it be loathsome unto you, because you have despised the Lord which is among you, and have wept before him, saying, why came we forth out of Egypt? How did they despise the Lord?
Ungrateful.
Their ungratefulness. Their complaining about that which God has provided for them. They really did dishonor God in what they were doing. Moses said, the people among whom I am are 600,000. So now Moses begins to think, whoa, Lord, you just said you're going to feed them all flesh for 30 days. 1,000,000 times 30 days. That's 30 million people with 1 quail apiece. That's a lot of quails. So Moses is beginning to think through this. Now look at verse 23. The Lord said unto Moses, is the Lord's hand waxed short? Thou shalt see now whether my word shall come to pass to you or not. In other words, don't you think I can do what I say? Do you think I just spout off? You're going to find out. Is my hand able to do what I say I'm going to do? You're going to see what I can do. I mean, if I can open oceans, if I can cause a whole nation to be destroyed, If I can lead 1 million people into a promised land, don't you think I'm able to take care of them en route to that place? You're going to see whether I can do it or not. And Moses went out and told the people the words of the Lord, and gathered the 70 men of the elders of the people, and set them round about the tabernacle. And the Lord came down in a cloud, and spake unto him, and took of the Spirit that was upon him, and gave it to 70 elders. And it came to pass that when the Spirit rested upon them, they all went out and began to prophesy. Okay, now look at verse 31. 31. There went forth a wind from the Lord, and brought quails from the sea, and let them fall by the camp, as it were a day's journey on this side, and as it were a day's journey on the other side, round about the camp, as it were 2 cubits high upon the face of the earth. So about 3 feet high, all these quails coming in all around the camp, and all the people had to do was slap them down. You know, one time when I was younger, my brother laughed at me. I'd just come back from 5 years in Europe. He wanted to go to a carnival one night, but in the route to this carnival, we were going to go to a cave. Well, in those days, I didn't leave home without my little spring-activated billy club. And I took it and put it in my pocket. And we left it. He says, "What are you taking that for?" "We're going to a cave." Well, I was looking beyond the cave to the carnival. But I put it in my pocket, took it to the cave with me. When we got into that cave, bats started coming out at us. And just instinctively, I whipped that thing out, and whop, I popped me a bat right out of the air with that thing. Bounced him off of the wall. I'm going to tell this story a little further since my mother's here, so you can see what I did to her. Knocked that bat silly. My younger brother, 2 brothers with me, my youngest one, I said, "Take off your t-shirt." And I wrapped the bat up in the t-shirt. That was my trophy. Threw it in the back of the car. We went on and did our stuff. When we came in just a little before sun up in the morning, coming in the front door, and like I said, I just come back from Europe, so I was staying at my mother's house, and I just threw that t-shirt with the bat in it beside the door. I thought the bat was dead. My mother woke me up a few short hours after that, just screaming. I jumped up, and she went out there and thought, "What's that muddy shirt doing there?" And she went to pick it up, and the shirt started flapping around. That bat was just knocked out. But these quail come flying in, and these people were just able to pop them right out of the air with sticks or with their hands or whatever, and they're just knocking quails down all over the place here. Now watch. "And the people stood up all that day and all that night and all the next day, and they gathered the quails, and he that gathered the least 10 omers." That's about, that's over 62 bushels. 62 bushels. Now, you know, when I was a kid, we used to do everything in bushel baskets and pecks and things like that. We don't do that. I think about the only thing that remains are the quarts and gallons and pints. But bushel baskets, that's them big old, well, I don't even know what they're made out of, some kind of thin wood, usually. And it's like a laundry basket today, it's the closest thing I could think of. And they were able, the one that got the least had 62 laundry baskets full of quail. That's a lot, that's more quail than a deer, you see. And they filled it up with all of these quail. And then it says, "And they spread them all abroad the camp for themselves round about the camp." So now they're probably drying some of this meat out. So they got so much of it. "And while the flesh was yet between their teeth, ere or before it was chewed, the wrath of the Lord was kindled against the people, and the Lord smote the people with a very great plague." So now, before they even get to chew the stuff up good, they're starting to drop dead from it. "And he called the name of the place Kibroth-hattaavah, which means the graves of lust." They were called the graves of lust because they buried the people that lusted. And then the people journeyed on. You see, friends, when we feel that we have something, if we're going to allow appetite to control us, and we spoke briefly on this a couple of weeks ago, I've heard people say, well, I can't live if I don't have this item or that item or some other particular food item. Do you think that your life depends upon eating a particular thing? I don't think so. If you eat a well-balanced diet, you can do without. I mean, how many of you eat pomegranates every day? Most people in Texas don't, do we? I don't mind the things, but, you know, I like every fruit and vegetable you can think of. But we feel, oh, we've got to have the flesh pots. Oh, we got to have the fish. Or we've got to have anything, even if God says it's best not to have it. We insult God when we turn down what He has given to us as the best thing for us to go after something else. So going back to Exodus 16 again, let's go back and see what happened. Let's look a little bit more at this manna. Verse 14. So they wanted the flesh pots. God provided them with the manna. And then verses 14 and 15 of chapter 16. Watch what that says. And when the dew that day was gone up, behold, upon the face of the wilderness there lay a small round thing, as small as the hoarfrost on the ground. And when the children of Israel saw it, they said one to another, it is manna, which means basically, what is this? They didn't know what the stuff was. Never anybody had seen it before. It is manna, for they wist not what it was. And Moses said unto them, this is the bread which the Lord has given to you to eat. God has made this for you. It's never been available to anybody before anywhere. It's not been available since. But God made provisions for them. Now, dropping down just a little bit further, watch what's going on. Verse 20. It says, notwithstanding they hearkened not to Moses, but some of them left of it until morning, and it bred worms and stank, and Moses was wroth with them. You see, with the manna, the instruction here was very simple. The manna is going to be out there every morning for you. All you got to do is get out of bed, get you a bucket or a basket or something, and pick this stuff up and put it in there. And you can make all kinds of stuff. It was more versatile than wheat. They could do flour kind of things and everything out of it. All you have to do is every morning you get enough for that one day. But don't get too much. Because if you get more than eaten in one day, it will turn to worms. It will rot and it will stink. But some people, for some reason, I don't understand why people do that, but they went out and they maybe figured, well, I'm going to sleep in tomorrow because, you know, when it got hot out, the stuff disappeared. For some reason, they take enough so they don't have to get up in the morning and go pick it up. And they get up in the morning thinking, ha, I don't have to go out there and pick that stuff up. It's over in the corner. And they go over there, and it's full of worms. God also said, but on the sixth day, you must get 2 days' worth, because on the Sabbath there won't be any out there. Now he's trying to teach them something here. So it will turn to worms every day, except if you pick it up 2 days' worth on Friday, and it will keep for you. And would you believe, some people get up on Sabbath morning and go out looking for their food. Too lazy to get 2 days' worth the day before. And that was what was going on. And so this is what it's saying here in verse 20 when it says, some didn't listen to Moses, and they let it set overnight and it turned to worms. Then verse 31. Go down a little further here. And the house of Israel called the name thereof manna, and it was like coriander seed, white, and the taste of it was like wafers Made with honey. That sounds pretty good to me, isn't it? Like wafers made with honey. Okay, let's read through here a little further of this, though. Let's start with 23 and read down to that now. And he said unto them, this is Moses, this is that which the Lord has said. Tomorrow is the rest of the holy Sabbath unto the Lord. Bake that which you will bake today, and seethe or boil that you will seethe. And that which remains over lay up for you to be kept until morning. And they laid it up till the morning, as Moses said, and it did not stink, neither was there any worm therein. And Moses said, eat that today, for today is a Sabbath unto the Lord. Today you shall not find it in the field. 6 days shall ye gather it, but on the seventh day, which is the Sabbath, in it there shall be none. And it came to pass that there went out some of the people on the seventh day together, and they found none. Now notice what God said. How long refuse ye to keep my commandments and my laws? Do you know this is 2 weeks before the 10 Commandments were ever written? The commandment of the Sabbath had been there since when? Creation. And now God says, how long are you going to refuse to keep my commandments and my laws? See, for that the Lord hath given you the Sabbath, therefore he giveth you on the 6th day the bread of 2 days. Abide ye every man in his place, and let no man go out of his place on the 7th day. So the people rested on the 7th day. Now, my friends, God requires that his holy day be as sacredly observed today as it was at the time of Israel. God is still displeased when we choose to disregard his commandment. The command given to the Hebrews should be regarded by all Christians today as a direct injunction from the great God of heaven to themselves. And the day before the Sabbath, the day of preparation, is when everything should be made ready for those sacred hours. That's what God was trying to impress upon them all the way back then. And in no case should we allow our own business to encroach upon that holy time. We should sacredly guard the edges of the Sabbath. God has also directed that on this holy day, the sick and suffering should be cared for. The labor required to make those that are afflicted comfortable is no violation of the Sabbath. But all unnecessary work is to be laid aside. Shopping, television, radio, all of the secular, anything that is not directing our attention to God or the ministry of his afflicted people should be regarded as inappropriate. But many people today carelessly put off till the beginning of the Sabbath the little things that might have been done on the day of preparation, and this ought not to be. Oftentimes work is neglected until the Sabbath is actually beginning, and it should be left until the Sabbath is passed. It's a growing thing that many have to come into. I can remember when I first became a Seventh-day Adventist Christian, I thought it's no problem as long as I punch out at work. This was before I went on management there. If I punch out before 5 o'clock, that's okay. I might have 20 minutes to get home or whatever, but I've got all of that other stuff that should have been done. We should have everything taken care of before those hours begin. Every week, during their sojourn in the wilderness, the Israelites witnessed a threefold miracle that was designed to impress upon their minds the sacredness of the Sabbath. The first was a double quantity of manna fell every 6th day. Second, none fell on the 7th day. And third, the portion carried over to the Sabbath